So maybe you nailed paper 1, but OCR, GCSE English Language paper 2 is fast approaching. Let me help you with the planning side for the descriptive narrative questions for section B. Remember, you need to do something different, something a bit cleverer in order to access the highest marks. You're in safe hands. This is Schofield on Shakespeare. This section is out of 40, but 24 marks are essentially for how well you've structured your piece for effect and the extent to which you've produced a mature, sophisticated tone. Planning is crucial in order to be able to hoover up the full 24 marks for AO5. In June 2023, you were asked to write a story with the opening words, "At that moment she realised." How would you plan a 7 to 9 paragraph response for this question? What would you include within each paragraph? Time to have a think about this. Yes, press pause now. The start of any creative writing piece must be interesting and must also confirm that you've understood the instructions for the task, i.e., you aren't just regurgitating some pre-learned mediocrity. The question states that you need to use "at that moment she realised" as the opening words of a story. So do this. I plan to put this within a single sentence paragraph. Note that I use the more complex word disproportionate to give the examiner an early indication that I can indeed use precise and subtle vocabulary. However, I'm going to make the reader wait. I'm not going to tell them straight away what has happened to make the main character consider that perhaps she has acted disproportionately. Instead, I'm going to provide an introduction to my main character. Like many teenagers, she likes football and her mobile phone. But slightly unusually, she also loves to spend time in her allotment. I tend to get bored when I read a narrative which plods dispiritingly through mundane activities in chronological order. Remember that AO5 looks for a skillfully controlled overall structure. So keep the reader engaged. Think about the foci of your paragraphs. Here, I shift without any preambles to Hannah struggling within the examination hall. She is daydreaming, and unsurprisingly perhaps for someone attuned to nature, finds herself mulling over trees and the sky, rather than churning out exceptional examination responses. I then shift immediately to the consequences of such dreaminess, a dismal mock examination reports, and a furious telling off from her parents. Although Hannah doesn't respond directly to her parents' criticisms, she does internalise her feelings. This paragraph focuses on her feelings of anger and frustration. I know that I will probably want to use 2 similes, 1 metaphor, and 1 example of personification within this response as a whole. Here, I plan my simile, which will involve a washing machine. My general advice is certainly to avoid melodrama and violence within these pieces. However, here I want to switch to a dramatic description of Hannah trashing her own allotment. I plan to use a series of dramatic verbs to highlight the damage she causes due to her own feelings of frustration and impotence following her examination results and the exchange with her parents. You will certainly want to use at least 1 single sentence paragraph within this part of the exam. Actually, in this piece, I use 2, following my initial unexplained first paragraph. For this paragraph, I simply sum up the devastation caused to the allotment. It had become a wasteland. Following the trashing, Hannah returns home, only to find her parents in more reflective, conciliatory moods. They apologise, and they contextualise her results. GCSEs actually do not have to be the be-all and end-all, in spite of what blinkered teachers may like to imply. But the damage has been done to the allotment. The final paragraph is a sombre summary of how she has destroyed so much of her hard work at the allotment. And so finally we return to the opening statement. At that moment, she realised that her response had been disproportionate. After going back in time, we are now back at the beginning. In June 2023, you are also given the option to write a story about an exciting journey. How would you plan a 7 to 9 paragraph response for this question? What would you include within each paragraph? Time to have a think. Yes, it's pause time. I want to try to create a more mature tone. And so, rather than launch into my breathtaking account of my exhilarating trip to Alton Towers, I allude to the general cynicism of teenagers forced to endure, with a capital E, a family holiday. This would be a single, short sentence paragraph for effect. In the next paragraph, I will shift to the preparation and packing for this exciting journey. It's chaos at home, and I plan to have fun hamming this up. I will mention tiny, close details of mess and filth as individual family members prepare for this holiday. Remember to use as many of the senses as possible in your descriptive narrative writing in order to make it more vivid. In this paragraph, the plan is only to reference sounds. The brother is going through puberty, hence the erratic switches in pitch between baritone and contralto. Meanwhile, the father relishes a good deep-throated snort. Whilst all the packing and chaos is going on, plenty of coffee is of course essential, hence the churning and whirring noises from the coffee machine. I used to recommend just one short paragraph for effect for these pieces. I'm beginning to shift towards 2. Note the artificial separation between set off and for the holiday of a lifetime in order to imply the cynical attitude of the teenager. But clearly you can't spend too much time for a question of this nature describing the build-up rather than the actual journey. I've split the journey into 3 segments. The first one is the car to the airport, the second is at the airport, and the third is on the plane. Here I want build-up, and I want to withhold information about the brother vomiting partially within the car after getting travel sick. Notice how I build up, including questions such as, however, did my brother really need to choose this moment? Part 2 of the journey details a splendid public row between a couple within the huge queue to check in at the airport. Most importantly, the row is about something incredibly petty. Part 3 of the journey is about the antics of some women on a hen trip. They want more alcohol. They demand more alcohol. But they are already drunk, loud and obnoxious. The pilot's calming influence is called upon. And at the end of this piece, I repeat my opening sentence. However, the tone is very slightly different following the lively descriptions of parts of the journey and the use of an ellipsis at the end rather than a full stop. For the first June 2022 question, you were asked to use the title The Power of Nature for a story. How would you plan a 7 to 9 paragraph response for this question? What would go into each paragraph? Have a think, press pause now. In this piece, rather than just launch into endless imagery about skies, trees and the good old sun, I plan to adapt a comparative approach. Nature is powerful because it can assuage, it can bring us back to genuine living. This first paragraph will consist of a detailed description of stress, racing thoughts, quick to irritation, restlessness. I do love a single sentence paragraph for effects, especially if it signifies something important or a change in direction. however, delay things within these pieces. After announcing mysteriously that there is another way in paragraph 2, make the reader wait for details of this other way. And so instead drip feed the reader with further details about the mundane, unnecessarily stressful experiences of everyday life, the petty arguments, the disputes, the niggles. In paragraph 4, it's time for another hint about the other way. Might it perchance relate to the power of nature and include a beach setting? But I want to keep my reader waiting for longer, goddammit. And so it's time for another shift of focus, this time to reflect on other, implicitly less successful ways of de-stressing in relation to the most powerful one in healing nature herself. There are those breathing techniques where we're told to inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 2 seconds before exhaling for 6. There are those breathy panpipes on YouTube with fake-looking backdrops of mountains. But do these strategies genuinely work, or are they ultimately superficially unsatisfying? So, now we've seen the rest, let's explore the best. Here is the beach setting alluded to within paragraph 4, the one which simply stated white sand. Flood this paragraph with imagery about sea, cliffs, trees, sky, and bracken. Create a dreamy, soothing atmosphere. Sometimes it can be helpful to use cinematic language when planning these creative writing pieces. Here we zoom into my feet. Not a pretty picture, alas. And my sensations against cool sand which moulds around my feet and the cool sea water. But of course, once one part of the body has felt something as deliciously revitalising as cold water, the rest of the body wants in on the act. Hence my screech of joy as I immerse myself into the power of nature. Note how in this final short dramatic paragraph for effect, I not only reuse the title, but the words from paragraph 2 about there being another way. Now we know what this way is. For the second June 2022 question, you were asked to write about a time you experienced something you did not expect. How would you plan a 7 to 9 paragraph response for this question? What would go into each paragraph? Have a think and press pause. In my plan, I will use hyperbole to confirm the extent to which I hate, I loathe, I despise English. Ironically, I will hijack a famous Shakespearean quotation to illustrate this. Let's face it, poetry is pretentious balderdash, and who on earth made up the grammar rules with inverted commas? In paragraph 2, I introduce and describe my English teacher, who is a living, breathing cliché. And why doesn't he ever clean his bloody glasses? Another switch in paragraph 3, this time to my mother. She claims she is a passionate student of English and is baffled why I am not. Yet her material consists of Bella magazine and OK. Tone is so important for accessing the higher marks for these questions. Hence this single sentence short paragraph for effect. English is the sweetest of nectars from the gods, the ambrosia that sustains our hopes and dreams. Can this be dismissed as over-the-top sarcasm? Or is the tone more ambivalent? We know that the narrator doesn't like English and doesn't like his teacher. He now has a piece of creative writing to complete. The title, A Time When You Experienced Something You Did Not Expect. Yet, alas, our narrator has no ideas whatsoever for such a cliched question. The plan is to go to town with extended descriptions of boredom, which will be personified. Paragraph 2, introduce the English teacher. Paragraph 6 gives insight into one of his dreadfully boring lessons. Again, the plan is to incorporate a line from a Shakespearean play, but to use it to mock. Lady Macbeth may have wanted her husband to look like the innocent flower, but actually be a serpent. The trouble was that no one in the room, apart from the teacher, could have cared less. In paragraph 7, time for a shift. I like the idea of something changing through the course of these creative writing pieces. Could this single sentence paragraph, for effect, signify this? But I'm not going to reveal immediately what the comment and mark said. Oh no! I want to build up the reader's interest and intrigue, and so I delay this revelation by including some quasi-philosophical reflections about the importance of being flexible in your outlook to others in life. The ending will simply consist of the glowing, inspirational comments made by the teacher. Yes, that same teacher that I've spent the majority of the piece mercilessly mocking. Note also that I plan to use an accurate semicolon in this paragraph with a main clause on either side.
We've been exploring Paper 2 Section B with the exam just days away. Good luck and many thanks for watching Schofield on Shakespeare.